mutual aid agreements so that the other towns in that area, and there's 60 some odd towns, will also come help if there's a fire.
Well, I think that's quite accurate. I think the way to describe what mutual aid does is there's somebody there to answer the phone and send whatever kind of help it is that you require in a town that pays the tax to belong. I think the mutual aid piece is an intertown, is not conditional on making this payment. I think that's an intertown agreement because I know I've signed them.
Okay.
Not with every town, but with border.
So that's still doing research, Mike. Sorry, Chris.
Just go ahead and hijack this meeting.
We're in order. Go ahead. We're kind of, Carol asked a question in an email that I could, and it's something general government should pick up on. Nobody's looking at this communications line, and we didn't lump it under us, so that's when you dial 911. But I'm not getting the difference between that and Keene Dispatch.
If the number, that $400-something dollars they spend, or the dollar they put in for the budget time, if there's something happens up the tower that needs to be repaired,
That makes sense.
that's what we pay.
So it's not pages and radios.
Correct.
Because that goes by department.
Yeah.
What tower are we talking about?
We have a bunch of expensive stuff hanging off the cell phone tower that you can see up there.
Mutual aid.
And the sheriff has a bunch of expensive stuff hanging off of the other tower that we no longer use.
So is Carol right that Keene Dispatch pays so that everybody has coverage?
Keene Dispatch doesn't pay anything. People pay them.
Well, that's what I mean. You know.
We have never gotten any money.
Like during the flood, people came here from other places, and so those places that they came from need to be covered by towns closer to them.
That's part of the mutual aid, yes.
So what's Keene Dispatch?
Touch up
They
the
went
general
and all the
bunch of
radios. And they actually, the old fire station,
Yeah.
they built a new fire station, the old one, they took over that. I think they leased it or they bought it. I think they bought it. And then they have all the radios and everything else, and the personnel that man it, we pay their wages and replace all the equipment that's in there that needs to
I
be
mean, this is
replaced.
$20,000. Okay. Just,
And they set their own rates. I believe is the chief from each town has a voting. There's something that Kim explained at one time. It's a while ago. I don't quite remember it a whole bit, but somehow the chiefs are the one who vote who's in charge of the mutual aid.
Let's stop and think about what you're getting for $20,000. If you had somebody sitting here 24/7, 365, what that would cost.
no, I get that, but so there's that's $20,000 for Keene Dispatch and another 11 for the 911.
Right, and Charlestown pulled out of it.
Oh,
So therefore,
right. I was looking back.
less
Okay.
people paying the same.
All right, got it.
So whenever you have a question like that, what's this?
What was her question?
Whenever any of you have a question like that, please send a respectful email to me, copy to Linda, saying please run the detail on this line.
Okay.
Because that just prints out the checks that left the building. And that has more information in it by an order of magnitude than my memory, as you can see.
I just read my emails 5 minutes before they came here.
You should think twice about that.
Ever honest?
But it's with the software setup that we're using now, with Kelly's rapidly ramping up expertise, it's not an onerous question. You shouldn't expect an instant answer, but 24 hours is it's trivial.
Yeah, no, that's good.
They can always find time to say print out line 420, blah, 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 and then we'll actually all be on the same page briefly.
Good. Well done.
Until something else changes.
Well, that's how we do it. I mean, there's how many hundreds of lines are there in this mess?
I just can't believe that general government missed that line. We have it now.
All right, let's get on our order of business here. Welcome to Michael, no other visitors, and Joel. We are online, I understand, Michael, so welcome to the viewers. The minutes for the 11th of November, there are a couple things that I wanted to suggest to change. I think we should note that Juliana Stevens took the minutes. I believe Michael Gordon was here as a visitor, in addition to Barb. And in the EMSG notes on that committee's work, said that Chris has completed FEMA classes, and I think we should specify which Chris.
You're awash with Christmas.
It's so rare.
Rich with Christmas.
Thank you.
I like that word, too.
Those are the only things that I,
Did you write this down?
yes.
I don't think so.
Anything else to adjust to the minutes? All right, is there a motion to approve them as amended? To approve this version of the minutes? Les, second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you. Glenn and I were just at a school board site-based meeting, and the principal, Gail, was discussing the proposed budget, which hasn't been finalized by the board yet, but is there anything you think we should throw in here tonight?
Other than the adequacy aid, I guess they decided that they paid us too much over the years, and they're gonna be reducing the amount we get by 4% until someone votes to change it again. But
This being the state,
this is
decided we were
the
paying.
adequacy aid. So we're gonna lose $51,000, the town of Alstead. Charlestown's gonna get the worst, $160,000. Ackworth goes up 28,000, Langdon goes down, but it goes up by 38, about 38,000, and Walpole goes up by 82. And they're just trying to make up for what they actually overpaid. There's a word for it, I'm trying to remember what the word is, but they were supposed to cut adequacy aid a while ago, and then they came back and said, well, no, we're not gonna cut it that much. So they increased it again, and they said, well, we increased it too much, so now they're actually taking that money back over time. 10 years is what they propose. So over 10 years, that adequacy aid is gonna go down by 4% every year. Until the next legislature gets in there and votes.
Decides to do something different.
Changes something
So
else.
it'll be something, some changes in the bottom line of our,
Right, this is the income side of it. And actually, the budget for Alstead wasn't too bad, it was only up,
1.16 was it?
yeah, it wasn't much actually.
This is
Yeah,
this.
1.1%, so it's not,
This is for the Fall Mountain budget, our share.
that does not include any of the teacher's raises if the budget, the new contract passes. And non-union employees, which is not many.
And those are warrant articles, she said, right?
The non-union is not warrant articles. Those will be, yes, I think those are warrant articles on that. But the teacher's contract is coming up. I think they've negotiated a new contract with them. I think they talk about that. Actually, Monday night, 6:30 at the high school at the library. If you look at all the big numbers for the entire district, they're doing a presentation to the school board.
So let's be clear, that the increase in the district budget is not 1.16%.
That's just ours.
This is the three little schools and the three little towns.
No, that's just
Is
Alstead.
it just the two schools?
Just the primary school, the wireless.
Offset by income from one to the
That isn't added into this part of the
so
budget.
that's gross, not net.
And,
I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn.
yeah, Ackworth, actually, their budget went down 6%, full 6%, and Langdon went down about 5%.
These are proposals, right?
These are proposals, right? And then these are proposed to next Monday at 6:30 at the high school, at the library. The administration proposes this, and then the school board did talk about the windows at the Violet's gym. They're not working so much on the floor right now because the windows,
Sorry.
they would like to put on for a warrant article. So they're getting prices two different ways of keeping the arch on the top of the window. And the other way was to make the window shorter and then fill in the top. They're going to get prices both ways. And then once we get the prices, then we can decide whether we want to keep it the way it is or go with smaller windows with filler at the top. Like similar. I have seen slate on some of them and some of them fill them with
They did it.
wall, right? Yeah, put slate up there and like that. So almost that public hearing.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of horsepower opposed to that.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. You know, that would
They didn't like it, and they didn't want to spend any money on new windows, and Bill buying was oil. We're talking about oil here, we're not talking about windows.
Yeah.
And it took 3 or 4 years for eventually to pass.
It won't pull. Yeah, yeah. And anybody that's been there when it's cold can stand inside of those windows, you know how much heat's going out those windows.
The problem was it wasn't going to look like it was then when the critic went to school in the 60s.
Yeah.
So, we'll continue with discussing what things that happened at the select board meeting. And Joel wants to leave at 8 o'clock, which I think is...
Well, we could 7.
You said 8 last night. This is not an auction. So anyway, you have to be up at 3:30 to drive your bus. Pretty early anyway.
I was actually wondering if a person might, if we wanted to talk about during this dark winter months, to move the meetings to 6.
No.
Sam, just because you
Well, let's
said,
not talk about it now. Let's talk about it later in the meeting under new business.
if the selectmen can do it, so can others.
So, let's carry on with what happened with the select board meeting. There was discussion about beginning the employee evaluations and job descriptions work, and I believe you said, Joel, or somebody said that there will be 2 of the...
Let me explain my process.
Please.
Priscilla and I met over the weekend. We did not delve into her husband's whiskey cabinet, much to my regret, but we probably got more done. We reviewed all the job descriptions that came from the sample packet from HR, and we added a piece from Lineborough, which I had recently collected. And we agreed on a methodology, whereas I delivered administrative staff boilerplate job descriptions to the 2 ladies in the back room here on the left and said, in a week, Priscilla and I are going to sit down with you and we're going to ask what's on here that you do, what should be on here that you do, what's on here that you do but you shouldn't be doing in your estimation, and what have we overlooked entirely. Questions like that try to accurately describe the circumstances we have rather than build an ideal universe and then try to impose that, which we may wind up doing. But this is our first one. So, Monday or Tuesday of the coming week, we'll have that meeting, and then we'll start on highway. Simple as that. We'll just go right down the list. And keeping it, we don't, none of you are unwelcome, but I think it'll be more efficient and less threatening to the staff if it's just us. I think bringing people into an environment like this at 7 p.m. at night is probably a mistaken procedure. So
We're trying to build morale.
we volunteered to do this in daylight hours when people are on the clock.
Right.
So that's what we're doing.
And then the evaluations will grow out of whatever descriptions or...
I've yet to meet anybody who thinks there's any sense in evaluations absent a job description. Because the purpose of the job description, in my mind at least, is to get it done and then give it back to the employee and turn it into a job description and say, this is what you're going to be evaluated on in 6 months. Sign right here if that's okay, or if we need to make more changes, let's make them. We, of course, evaluate our employees every day when we run into them, but that's not systematic, that's not what grown-ups do in a real organization. That's just us being in a small town. Probably worth for 250 years, but my sense is it's probably not going to work much longer that way.
You also mentioned the meetings with employees about the insurance.
Actually, I'm going to do all the talking again. We finished the second of our meetings with the full-time staff about health insurance, and our second meeting was much more productive than our first. We brought 2 reps of Health Trust over, and we had instructed them after our first meeting to bring us proposals for high-deductible HSA type plans. They did that. We spent an hour and a half talking about what that means, and I think we generally got 100% buy-in on that. The selectmen have to make a decision by December 18th. The selectmen have made it. It's clear to the select board, and it's also now clear to the employees that this is a decision that the selectmen make. It's not a negotiation, but we don't want it to feel like
You want to surprise them with it.
no, well, they're not going to be surprised, but we don't want to feel like it's a fiat. So what we're trying to do is sell it, basically. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. My next move is to meet individually with each of the eligible employees and discuss with them out of earshot of their peers what their health circumstances are, so that we together can make sure that this particular proposal won't put them upside down in some way that we hadn't anticipated. The professionals assure us not, but they are in the business of selling this stuff, and we're in the business of buying it. And to be clear, we don't
have to do their work.
To be clear, we do not have to stay with this company, but our experience in shopping around in recent years has told us that the municipal association structure is best for us. But we're open to considering other options. Glenn has given me a broker. I've talked to my carrier. They don't seem all that interested in small municipal projects. But
I thought we had a policy that if something was going to cost over a certain amount, there had to be multiple bids on things. Wasn't that a Chris Reitman thing?
Certainly could be. Would you recommend, would this group decide to recommend that we bid out health insurance for 2016? Please let me know. Right now, I'm describing the path that I'm on. I want to make sure everyone understands that that is not concrete or stone. That's the path that I'm on with the deadlines and the people that I have to work with.
So, excuse me, Joel, you're going to keep the same municipal organization, but you're going to add flexible spending accounts?
No.
No, you're not doing that.
The HSAs are not flexible spending accounts.
I mean HSAs, sorry.
Critical difference for me.
Okay.
And I think for our employees, although this is the hard part that people have because it's difficult to understand the difference if you don't have any money invested in the answer, which our guys don't. Part of what we're trying to do is avoid the Cadillac tax on the existing plan, which will kick in 2018, if not before, depending on who gets elected and how the El Nino goes. But if the law that is in effect now is not disturbed by ISIS, we will pay a 41% premium tax in 2018 on the existing plans. We don't want to do that. It doesn't buy us any more coverage. Doesn't make the employees' health care package any better. It just transfers 41% of whatever those premiums are into a federal agency.
HSA is health savings account.
It is. There's a couple of ways to fund those. We're exploring both of those. Basically, the HSA is code for high deductible. So instead of a copay when you do something like a prescription or office visit, and instead of an 80-20 copay when you get services, inpatient or outpatient, with a high deductible plan, generally after the deductible is met, there are no more out-of-pocket expenses for the insured or their family. High deductible means $2,500 for solo and $5,000 for a couple or a family. It's just not that high. But there's a couple of different ways to fund that. If it's an employee deduction, it's pre-tax, which is very nice. If it's an employer contribution, in whole or in part, it's obviously pre-tax. It protects the town from the potential for having to pay the Cadillac tax because the total premiums are considerably lower. The plan actually, from perspective of someone with a chronic issue, is better. terms of out-of-pocket expenses at least. And we do have at least one chronic issue in our employee family. So there's that. And that is the system that we've insisted that new hires, like Roger and Randy, plug into. They weren't given any choice. So this is what we're doing. So there is a point in time where there is some regulator in Concord who will eventually insist that whatever we do, we have to do it universally. I haven't run into that person yet, and that's not what we're doing at the moment, but that is the direction we're going.
And who's putting money into the health savings account? The town will be...
Right now, the town has funded, let me do the math here, 87% of the health savings accounts for the first year of our two new hires. I can't promise that that's what the next select board will do. I can't even promise that that's what will show up in January at the budget hearing, because we have every different kind of family structure, single, two-person, and the numbers are radically different as you go down that chart. So we need to, as administrators, we need to make sure that we're not, through ill-considered policy, sliding into some status quo that will go upside down on us over time. So that's what's happening over there. I expect to complete those interviews by the end of next week. I don't quite know how I'm going to do that, but that's my goal.
Okay.
I don't know where you guys get your information. The treasurer is almost out of money. The treasurer did not make an unrefundable double payment to the state.
You're skipping around.
Yeah, we're still,
Bridge design proposal.
Oh. So why don't you guys just watch the TV then?
It wasn't online, I tried.
Hey, complain to him.
He already left.
so, among other things last night, and you did talk about the bridge design proposal or proposals.
It's true. I interviewed a relatively young firm who was formed out of people we worked with after the flood. The DOT did some buyouts and some downsizing of their engineering staff. I think they're essentially just downsizing the amount of work that they're willing to do. I don't think they're replacing these guys with computers. But whatever's going on, here's two less than middle-aged guys who are out on the street. They formed an engineering firm. They have the requisite engineering licenses and educations, and they're well known to us and to the bridge design team in Concord. And they're going around the state talking to communities like us that have little tiny municipal bridges on the red list. And they're essentially offering to provide design services, not construction management, not bidding management, design services for two different ways to replace a municipal bridge. One is the way that we did it out here on the Hill Road with a homemade solution. And the other is to do the full boat design to satisfy the needs of the 80-20 state bridge aid match designs, because they will only pay for a particular kind of construction, basically a 70-year bridge instead of a 30 or 40-year bridge. The good news is, well, the bad news is that those two proposals are very different, both in terms of scope and price. The good news is for the state-approved design criteria, 100% of that fee is reimbursable from Concord the day after the bridge fund is reinstated, which is sort of like either next year or never, depending on how much faith you have in the lottery, I think. I don't know. So it's a gamble, but I don't have any numbers. I expect to have numbers in mid-December. My goal as a selectman is simply to be prepared, better prepared than I am at this moment, for that day in October some year when we get the fax that says you can't drive over this bridge anymore. That's not a negotiated event. That's a fact that's hard to ignore.
Have we passed for this year?
Well, the nice and nasty thing about that is they won't answer that.
Till you get the call at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, from Ackworth.
It's not October anymore, so
Yeah.
My take is it's not October anymore, and
we may be.
but then a piece of information I picked up on Tuesday was that the bridges are bad enough. That is, if the red list score is high enough, then they come twice a year. So I can't deal with any of that, I can't control any of that, I can barely control my anxiety about that. So what I can do instead is advocate for being ready to do something, and there's two pieces of that. Glenn and I have discussed at least one of them. One of them is to have some preparation about what you're gonna do when the curtain finally falls. And the other is to make sure that to the extent that we're able as advocates, to make sure that capital reserve fund is robustly funded. And I think we've been fairly responsible about the one, and I'm going to ask us to be responsible about the other, but only after I find a price tag. I made them look at 4 bridges, not just 2, because I can see the future from here.
Right. Now, I know you were saying like a homemade thing, but they can design and build us a bridge, like you said, for 30 or 40 years versus the state. Because I just went to the meeting when they had the bridge people up in Aqua on Monday, and that's what it was almost $1 million a bridge. They were talking about 2 bridges out there.
Oh, we spend more than that on that project.
Right, but I mean, if you do it on your own though, it's a lot less than what we're getting from like Cold River Bridges and people like that, which are in the business of building bridges.
Yeah, maybe homemade's the wrong, homemade might be the term that sends the wrong message.
Right.
Those temporary bridges out there are approved by a licensed structural engineer with a big insurance policy.
Right.
Actually 2, one in Pennsylvania and one in New Hampshire. So, and we didn't make them here. We bought them and installed them. There are at least 2 other ways to go, and one of them is, which I do not endorse, but it's out there, and it sounds like it's what you're going to do, whether you know it or not, in Aqua, is to have the highway crew build it under professional supervision.
Well, no, the highway build, they're not gonna build it, but
We'll argue about that after it's built, we'll find out. And the other way to do it is to take that design specification and that engineer's stamp and put it out to bid for the locally made, non-state funded bridge. Those are the 3 ways to go. The third way to go is to close the road entire, which we certainly considered on Hill Road.
especially when it's falling into the.
And we tried to buy that house. I mean, we were desperate to either open or close that road, but not neither, if you know what I mean. And we failed miserably. I mean, that thing was closed for 18 months because we weren't prepared. I'd like not to repeat that experience.
So some figures may be available then in early December, you think?
They promised me information by mid-December.
Okay.
And whether we act on it or not, of course, we'll have, as part of a budget or a warrant article, will have everything to do with what the numbers are.
So the state funding, from what I understand, is out as far as 2024.
We are in for the worst of the bridges for 2021, the second for 24, the other 2 are not on the list. We have successfully applied for all 3.
Okay,
We're in the program, even for the one that we replaced.
okay.
The rule of thumb is, based on our experience and conversations with DOT and the legislature who just left, is that were we to build a local option for a short span bridge, which all 4 of these are, it would cost about the same as the 20% match for the big deal bridge.
Yeah.
The primary, and so in terms of economy, it doesn't make any sense to build a local option, except when you ask the question, when?
Right.
And the way it's set up right now, that bridge halfway up Hill Road would be closed until 2024 if they shut it down tomorrow, and we waited for state bridge aid, which does not now exist. So, a prudent selectman would probably not recommend that course of action, but the voters will decide.
Because the way they described it the other night is that the amount of money they have, they only can build about 10 bridges per year.
They've been putting the same amount of money in that fund since 1969.
Until the new tax came through, the fuel tax, they gave that money and then they took it away. They're supposed to double the funding.
Take it back to do other more urgent projects, and I'm glad I didn't have to go to that meeting.
Right, and they had 300 on the red list, with only 10 per year.
That's where we are now. That describes the present.
Exactly, yeah.
There is no state bridge aid,
Exactly.
You're about 15 minutes behind.
period.
Let's proceed here.
Is it 8 o'clock yet?
No, we're getting there. responsibility.
We did the math last night in non-public, and we propose, and I think we will sign a memorandum of understanding. Well, I used to say 10 days. I got a memo today that said 3 weeks. We will spend less than we were spending to fund the chief's position by a third.
To do what?
That is a full-time chief's position.
The one that's in our budget. So, we have negotiated an agreement with the state police to provide a minimum of 15 hours a week of patrol coverage to the town.
You have negotiated already.
We have, and then after we concluded those negotiations, the senior man with whom I did not speak came back and said, well, that's too much money, let's see if we can kick that back up to Concord and reduce the rate. We haven't finished that conversation yet, and when we do, then we'll seek counsel. Do we add hours, or do we simply stick with the original proposal? The proposal itself seems to meet everyone's needs in terms of Roger and Marcello and the state police. It does include the cap on Roger's hours at 45, which I think is a terrific idea and way too late, but there it is.
So 2 questions then. Where does Marcello fit into this? And the other question is, basically what you're saying then is you're not hiring a police chief. So where are you going with this? For how long with the state police?
We'll reevaluate after the first 60 days and see if we think we're getting what we want, what we pay for, if they're doing the reporting that my part of the memorandum requires, basically the same reporting we get from downstairs. Our relationship with Marcello is not intended to change until our local staff changes. We're paying him about 2 hours a week now to show up at meetings and advise us about our harebrained schemes, and he seems, if not happy to do that, then willing.
So 15 hours a week is what you're going to get out of the state police, you said?
That's the proposal that's been approved by all the players, and it had been priced, and now it's going out for reduced price. And what that number is, I do not know. The existing staff believes they can administer that through penny, especially the reporting piece. And everybody seems to be on board as that being better than nothing, which is where we are right now. I think the key element for me is to have real policemen in town on a more or less unpredictable basis, knowing, and the same guys week after week, so that they can become familiar with the particular circumstances we have. I wasn't actually able to extract that particular promise, but I got the one that said, well, it'll be the same group of 4 guys. So you'll get some continuity over time, horizontally, which is important to me. And the rest of that plan we will talk about at the next selectmen's meeting. There is an initiative taking shape to hire, but it's ill-defined at the moment, so I don't really want to blab that about. But the fundamental piece was we think it would be easier in the short term to hire an already certified New Hampshire officer of lieutenant or sergeant rank with career ambitions and some supervisory experience. And we could then say, look, this is a permanent position. Here's the resume we want you to grow into. Here's the job description we want you to grow into. And we may decide in a few months that that's what we want to do. We may decide as a community that we really like the unfolding state police coverage because it's fundamentally cheaper than what we've been doing. A question that cannot be answered until some time has passed. Is it adequate? Is it better?
And will it stay at Louisville?
Well, that's an issue too. I talked to the county police and they were perfectly happy to write annual contract to provide services. Our assessment was that they wouldn't provide the same service. They would provide the same amount of service and at remarkably similar pricing. As if somebody had talked to somebody else. But we also talked to neighboring departments who have either been unresponsive or simply said, we can't possibly think about that, which is entirely okay. Because I think this is the best of the 4 choices I looked at. We will see. Time will tell.
Okay, and
So that without that memorandum of understanding in place and the fact that Roger's going on sick leave and reduced duty starting last night for up to 3 weeks, I got back in touch with the colonel and said, hey, I'm in a much tighter spot than I was 72 hours ago when we last talked. And they immediately promised to ramp up their presence in our town without sending us a bill because they haven't got their end of the agreement done yet.
I saw it.
And anecdotally, I'd say this has happened, but I have no direct experience.
I have. I saw a cruiser pull someone over.
This is perfect. And the more random their appearance in this town is, the better we all are.
So the only police coverage we have at this moment then is state police.
Which has been true late nights and most
Maybe
weekends
it
for
shouldn't be on the TV.
Yeah, I have to say, this is.
too late for that.
Oops.
Oh, you are, make sure they all know we all have guns, so.
Yes, that's okay.
And your visit to the Line Borough's select board meeting and your observation of their administrator in action.
Would you like to paraphrase that for me, since you see more efficient
Well,
words than I do?
I guess what we're concerned with is budgetary implications, which will, I guess, involve, is this something that, all of you have said this might be something to consider in the budget for 2017, do you see anything happening sooner than that, or is there some report on how this might work that would be useful to know briefly tonight? I know Priscilla's been looking into some of this, administrator/manager.
To the extent that I speak for the select board, we do not at this moment plan to put a marker in the 16 budget for this position. The advice I'm receiving from professionals with more experience than me, both good and bad, is do not go fast. You got one chance to do this right the first time, and you better not screw it up, because if you do screw it up, and if you hire the wrong gal or guy to do this job, that position will never be filled again in your lifetime. Ask us how we know that, which is essentially what they were trying to tell us. So my next move on that is to visit the regional meeting in December of town administrators for a dozen towns and just poke around, listen mostly. And their advice will be, you need to figure out a way to delineate what you expect to happen and then how to qualify the person who might fill that slot. I have a very detailed job description. I will point out that it is, in my estimation, a professional position with not certification, but industry recognition and a task-specific bachelor's degree in public administration as part of that description, and yet still modestly compensated. I don't quite understand how that is possible. But Line Borough is a great example for us to study because they have almost exactly the same financial characteristics that we have.
Population is pretty similar to this.
So, and the budget's
A little
within,
smaller.
their budget is within $70,000 a month. I mean, same staffing. They do something different with police, which we're not going to talk about tonight, but I expect to spend some more time with them, and they seem to be running more smoothly than we do.
Are we talking administrator rather than manager?
Absolutely, and I would be happy to send you
Howard,
if I haven't already, the LGC did a nice disposition about, here's what you need to think about, and here's what the difference is, and I have yet to find anybody who said any town should hire a town manager. And in my professional experience of working with the town manager over in Rockingham, I agree.
I just wanted to clarify that.
We're talking town administrator, which is an at-will employee who reports to the selectmen,
I know.
not the voters, stands between the department heads and the selectmen.
Okay.
That's the goal. And did more than one of you receive that?
You sent it to me and I sent it to the committee.
Good. Well, you should have told me that earlier and I would have shut up.
No, I asked you the question. All right, under our old business, we're not keeping up with the budget calendar. How are we, how soon will we have an idea of the warrant articles that might be considered on this?
I have drafted a set of warrant articles, which I'd be happy to send to you. I've already sent them to my brother selectman a week ago and received essentially no commentary. I'm okay with that because most of that left the numbers blank. I started with your piece, added some stuff of my own, got some legal advice about Article 2, and then simply wrote boilerplate, took your recommendations about funding capital reserve accounts, but other than that, did boilerplate about how that money should be raised and appropriated. So it's actually can come from a couple of different sources. I expect to run a little workshop on fund balance and why it's too high and why we want to spend that down, and hope that the voters will see some sense in that and react accordingly. I think the selectmen will eventually, I'm quite sure the selectmen will eventually propose in January and then again in February in a refined form, a funding model for most of the warrant articles that includes either some capital reserve or some fund balance and some current taxation, with the understanding that people need to know what the options are, and on the floor we can modify those ratios, including eliminating two of them, and still proceed.
Do you anticipate including a warrant article for a fire truck?
I do, and I put a $500,000 price tag on it as a placeholder. I also put in an article using the official language to adopt a statutory budget committee, in case anybody's interested in that.
Thank you.
It occurred to me that you people would be interested in that. But I think it would garner some support. And if the selectmen put it on, you can't take it off. You gotta vote. Well, I'm serious. I mean, we need to know that because that's not a money article. Right? But in January we'll decide, or in January then we'll present in February. I don't much care one way or the other, but I think there's